Welcome. Before we get our hands messy, let's set the stage. Today, our kitchen is going to double as our English classroom.
That sounds fun. So we're literally going to learn English while chopping onions?
Exactly. Every stir, every slice. Think of those as new words or phrases you'll add to your English menu. What do you hope to get out of mingling English with cooking?
I'd like to feel confident talking about recipes and maybe not freeze up when someone asks me to pass the spatula. Is that too basic?
Not basic at all. In fact, that's perfect. Real language happens in real kitchens, not just textbooks. Plus, we'll practice pronunciation, memorize key cooking terms, and sprinkle in some everyday phrases.
Oh, can we also cover kitchen safety? Like, what do I say if I nearly cut my finger? Not that I plan to, but you know.
Absolutely. Safety first. Always. We'll tackle phrases like careful, that's hot, or watch your fingers. Quick, clear language keeps both you and your kitchen partners safe.
Great. And, do we need any special tools or ingredients for this first session?
Just the basics: knife, chopping board, pot, and a healthy curiosity. If you have those, and maybe a towel for the spills, you're set.
All right, ready? Let's get started and hopefully make more than just a mess of my English.
That's the spirit. Mistakes are just seasoning for learning. So, shall we dive in? Let's dig into something really fun: action verbs and imperatives. Picture this: you're in the kitchen, recipe open, and every step uses a command. Chop the onions, stir the sauce. Simple, direct, and so memorable. Why do you think that works for language learning?
Well, it's like it gives you a clear job to do. The verb and the action are joined. If someone says whisk the eggs, you just start whisking. It's almost like your body remembers the English too when you actually do it.
Exactly. The physical movement cements the verb in your mind. Notice in cooking, we don't use full sentences like, would you mind chopping the carrots, please? Usually just chop, stir, mix. The imperative mood: short, punchy.
Right. But sometimes I get confused with verbs that sound similar, like slice and chop. Is there a trick to remembering when to use which?
Great question. Slice is for thinner, longer pieces, like slicing bread or cucumbers. Chop is more random cuts, like for onions or herbs. Think of slice as smooth and chop as forceful, maybe even a little wild.
Ha, that actually helps. So if a recipe says dice the tomatoes, is that something different again?
Yes, dice takes chop one step further. Dicing means cutting into tiny, even cubes, neat and small. So you start by chopping, then make even smaller cuts.
So imperatives guide each action, and the verbs give super clear steps. What's a good way to practice this, especially for remembering verbs?
Try saying each verb aloud while you do it. The physical act plus the spoken command: peel, pour, grate. That pairing turns English into muscle memory.
That's brilliant, honestly. Talking to yourself in the kitchen suddenly sounds less weird.
Not weird at all. It's active learning, letting your kitchen become a language lab. So, are you ready to cook and learn? Today, we're making a simple one pot vegetable stew. Nothing fancy, just easy steps, lots of useful English.
Oh, that sounds delicious already. Okay, what's our first step? And, which words should I listen for?
Great question. I want you to listen for words like chop, peel, stir, and simmer. Those are super handy in and out of the kitchen. Let's start by chopping the onions. You take an onion, grab your knife, and chop it into small pieces.
Wait, so chopping just means cutting, right? How is that different from maybe slicing or dicing?
Excellent. Chop is a more general word. Just cut into pieces, not too precise. Slice means thin, flat pieces. Dice means small cubes, like tiny squares. See how the words match what you do with your hands?
Ah, got it. So if the recipe says dice the carrots, I'm making small cubes. But if it says chop, it's not so strict.
Exactly. Now let's move on. After chopping onions and dicing carrots, we add them to the pot. Listen to that phrase, add to. It's everywhere in cooking, but also in life. Like, can you add more details?
Interesting. Combining English and food. I kind of like this. Okay, so we've got bunions and carrots in. What's next?
Now we stir everything together. Use a spoon, gently move the veggies around. Stir means mix with a circular motion. Go ahead and repeat. Stir.
Stir. Like, stir the soup until it's smooth. I hear that on cooking shows a lot, actually.
Right. Once it's mixed, we pour in the vegetable stock. Pour means to make a liquid flow from one container to another. Finally, we let it simmer. Simmer, that's when the heat is low and you see tiny bubbles, not boiling.
Wait, so simmering is softer than boiling? Like, not so many bubbles?
Precisely. Just a gentle bubbling. Can you summarize the steps back to me using the right words?
Sure. Chop the onions, dice the carrots, add them to the pot, stir, pour in the stock, and let it simmer. Did I get it?
Perfect. You see, you just learned a recipe and a bunch of kitchen English at once. Multitasking at its finest. All right, let's imagine we're cooking together at the kitchen counter. In English, things flow best when we're politely taking turns, especially when the space is tight and hands are busy.
Yeah, sometimes I just stand there, not sure what to say. Like, if someone's in my way, should I just ask them to move?
That's a great situation to practice. Instead of saying move, which sounds a bit harsh, you could try, could you please pass me the salt? Or, would you mind scooting over just a little? Softening it with could or would keeps it friendly.
Oh, right. So even simple things can sound polite, just with the right words. What if I want to offer some help? Say, someone needs to stir the soup, but their hands are messy.
Perfect scenario. You could say, would you like me to stir for you? Or a bit more direct, but still polite. Can I help with that?
And if someone offers help to me, what's the best way to accept? I usually just say okay, but is there a better way?
There is. Try, yes, please, that'd be lovely. Or, thanks, I appreciate it. Little touches like that make conversation warmer.
I like that. That'd be lovely. Sounds so natural. Could you give me another example? Maybe if I need someone to wait their turn at the sink?
Certainly, you might say, when you're finished, could I use the sink? Or even, do you mind if I go next? It's gentle, but clear.
So basically, add those little questions, could you, would you, to make it sound nice. Noted.
Exactly. In kitchens and in English, politeness smooths everything out, even when things get a bit crowded or stressful.
So while our stew is doing its thing on the stove, I remember you mentioned the phrase, spill the beans last time. Why do people say that instead of just, tell me the secret?
Great catch. Spill the beans is a classic food idiom. Imagine someone accidentally knocking over a pot of beans. Suddenly, everything hidden is out in the open. In English, it means to reveal something secret, kind of like letting all the information loose.
Oh, that makes sense. Are there other food idioms people use in everyday small talk? I think I've heard piece of cake, but why cake?
Absolutely. When someone says something is a piece of cake, they mean it's easy, like eating a delicious piece of cake, not a challenging task. Food idioms are everywhere. Butter someone up means to flatter someone. Full plate describes being busy. A lot of us use them without even realizing it.
That's funny. Sometimes I do feel like my plate is pretty full. If I use these idioms, will it make me sound more like a native speaker?
It really will. Idioms show you're comfortable with the culture and rhythm of the language. They add warmth to your conversation, especially in casual moments like chatting while something cooks. You don't need to use them all the time, but slipping one in, when it fits, feels very natural.
Got it. So if I'm stirring something and someone asks about my weekend plans, could I say, oh, I've already got a lot on my plate?
Exactly. And if you forget an ingredient but make do, you could say, I'm in a bit of a pickle. It makes small talk more colorful, especially in the kitchen. All right, so before we wrap up, let's pull together everything we've practiced. What stood out to you most in today's kitchen adventure?
Honestly, it surprised me how much vocabulary I picked up, like to whisk and to simmer. I used to mix them up. And the way you said chop, I never noticed the sharp ch sound before. Is that normal to connect a specific motion with a sound?
It absolutely is. In fact, linking words to actions makes remembering both easier. And yes, paying attention to those sounds, like the short I in whisk or the soft in simmer, can boost your pronunciation. Would you like to try saying them again?
Sure. Whisk, simmer, chop. Hmm. I think I still flatten the I in whisk.
Good ear. Try to let your tongue rest low and the jaw a tiny bit open. Whisk. No rush. The important thing is to practice, even outside the kitchen. Maybe you can talk yourself through a recipe next time you cook.